People are still joining. I think we will start within 5 minutes, so we can start within 5 minutes or so. People are still joining, I think.
Shall we start or should we wait for another 2-3 minutes?
I think we can start because the first two slides are the same as this covered in the first session. So I think we can start till then.
Mm.
They will start joining.
Okay,
Yeah.
Samir, Rishiraj, continue.
Just in a minute. So hello everyone. I am Rishiraj Kalita from the Computer Science Department, and today we will be discussing the backend part of the development. As you guys know that you have already covered the front end part of the development, like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Now we will dive deep into backend. So let me tell you a few things before I start. Uh, Backend is a bit trickier, to be honest, to be start with, but as you start coding in the backend, it becomes easier and easier, and there will be a time that you will feel that backend is more easier than the front end. So in this session, I want you guys to tell me the pace to which in go in, because I don't want to go too fast, nor want to go too slow because you will get bored. Okay. So I want you guys to stop me if I'm going too fast, and tell me also that if I'm going too slow. And I want you guys to respond, okay, today, because you guys will have doubts. That's obvious because there are a lot of concepts that we will be discussing today, and I want you guys that you ask your doubts. I want this to be an interactive session, and feel free to ask any doubts you have. Feel free to stop me anywhere in between, and I will not say anything. Okay, so make this an interactive session. So I will be starting in just a bit. So what is backend? That is the first slide is showing what is backend. This is the topic I covered in the first session also, that backend is basically the combination of both the server and the database. So what is a server? A server is a software written in a server-side language which can connect with our database. And what is a database, you might ask? A database is something where we store our data. Okay, we have our profile pictures, we have data about our profile pictures. So where we store them? You upload your profile pictures. Where you store them? You need a database for that. So backend is said to be the connection of the server and the database. uh, the server connects with the database using application processing interface, and sends response to the front end. That is, you have done writing with the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Nishi, I want you to go to the next slide. Yeah. So what does backend developers do? These are some of the most important tasks These are some of the most important tasks that backend developers do on a day-to-day basis. Creating databases and integrating and managing them. We will be creating databases. We will be managing them, like we will be saving data in the database. We will be deleting data from the database. We will be changing data from the database. So this is one of the tasks that backend developers do. Using backend frameworks to build server-side software. We will be using a lot of softwares. Okay, we will be using a lot of frameworks like Express, Django, Flask, and we will be discussing one of the frameworks in detail in today's session. So be in this session. You will learn a lot of things. Validating the data that is sent to the server. Like you will send data to the server from front end. You will send data to the server. Okay, you will be sending data to the server. Now the server will validate the data, that whether or not you have entered the right type of data or not. For example, in the phone number, if you enter a name, then it will not, the server will not accept and throw you an error. Integrating the user side elements with the server side logic. We will be doing that also today. I have given you a form in the group, in the participants group. We will be connecting that front, that is the form, that is the front end, with the back end. We will be connecting the form. We will be taking information from that form, and we will be connecting that with the back end to create users. So we will be doing almost all the tasks that the backend developers do today, and you will be learning a lot of things. Okay, so stick together. Next session. And for this slide, I would like to ask Ujjwal Bhaiya to explain from this slide.
Yes, Rishaj. Am I audible?
Yes, Bhaiya.
Okay, as Rishaj already gave you the overview of what a backend development is. As backend development is also known as server-side development. And as you already gave the overview of how we handle database stuff, how we connect database, how we store user information, how we authenticate users, how we render various pages to your screen using backend development, what backend development actually is. So I'll tell you what server actually is. Okay. Uh, it's already said, as you can see in the slide, it's written that the backend development handles this behind the scenes functionality of an application. Like storing data into a database is not something that you'll see in your front end. That's something that is done behind the scenes, and rendering pages to the user, or even managing user sessions. You see, it sometimes happens that you are logged into a site, but when you visit after a while, and then you need to log in again to the site. That is, you are logged out automatically. These are basically known as user sessions. So managing those user sessions or managing user cookies are all done by the backend and part of your application. So let's first understand what is a server. As per what I understand a server to be, I've written a definition there. A server is nothing but a system. It's basically a system, can be a laptop, a desktop, anything, where the code that you have written runs for 24/7, that is unlimitedly runs every time, unless you yourself stop it from running, or the system or the server encounters an error. Only then the server stops, else the code will keep on running and automatically. And this is what a server is. It's basically a system. Okay. Do you have any doubts till now, till here? Your local system can also be a server. It can be anything. Any system can be a server. Okay. So a server is basically a system that hosts your code, that runs your code unlimitedly. Okay. And it is the output of this code, the code that is being run, that is running on the server, that can be accessed by anyone on the internet. Suppose if you say that you are typing a website name like dsc&its.tech, that is the official website of DSC and ITS Culture. So if you type dsc&its.tech, then you are making a request to a server, so that you get to see the page into your screen. Okay. So the page that is being delivered by server to you. How do we make a request? We can make a request using a URL, which is being governed under the domain name systems, or using an IP address. An IP address is basically a unique number code that basically defines your, the server that is being running, and that your code is being running on. Till now, do you have any issues with what I have told? Anyone? Okay. Nishi, can you go back to the previous slide once? Okay. So as Rishi has already told, that the server delivers the pages to your user screens. It manages users connections, and it connects your web page to the database. The server acts as a connection between the front end development as well as your database connections. And what a database is? A database is basically the collection of organized data. Suppose we are on this meet, right? We have around 51 people on this meet. So the Google server needs to store this data somewhere, right? For let's say for a temporary period, but the Google server needs to store this data. So the Google server will store your email ID, your name, and other details, whatever detail the Google server needs in an organized format into some file or into some place. And this file or this place is known as a database. Understood? Anyone please respond if you have anyone?
Yes, we understood.
Yes, Bhaiya. Yes, Bhaiya.
Okay. We'll be covering databases in our later slides because that's a used topic in itself. So let's first see how a request is made to a server. I say that the server processes the request, the server sends you the web page, but how is that actually done? So whenever you suppose type a particular website name into your browser, let's say you're typing DSC and ITS.tech into your website in browser, then what happens? Next slide, please. So you type a name into your browser. The browser then makes a request to the server. It's basically the server on which the DSC and ITS.tech code is being hosted. The server then sees, okay, I have a request, so I need to do something with the request, right? The server will wait and see, okay, I got a request. I need to process this request and do something with the request. So the server has either two options, either to respond to the request or generate an error. So if the request is a valid request, then it will respond with some data. And if the request is not a valid request, it will generate an error. Let's suppose the request is a valid request. Then the server will respond with a text file. You might be wondering, like, we are talking about HTML here. We are talking about rendering pages onto the screen. And how come the server is sending us a text file rather than an HTML file? So the concept here is that the server sends us a text file, but it contains some kind of a header. A header is basically top level, information about the file. And the server, the text file that is being received from the server, it contains a header of type HTML. So the browser sees, okay, I've received a file that is a text file, but the content of the file should be considered as an HTML. So the browser then sees that file type to be HTML, and then it renders the HTML file to the user. Understood till now?
Yes, Bhaiya.
Yes, Bhaiya.
Yes, Bhaiya.
Can anyone explain what I told? Like in simple terms, whatever you understood. Anyone?
Bhaiya, may I say?
Yes, sure.
Yeah, sure.
Bhaiya, you said that first we make a request from this web page, and the request is sent to the server side and a server system, and then the system then makes a request to the database. If the request is valid, then the database returns a response, and then the response is shown to us on the web page. And if the response is invalid, then it shows an error.
Kind of okay, but I have not talked about the concept of databases here. I have not talked about the concept of databases yet. What I said is the request is made to the server, and then the server responds with a request, okay, with the data. That is a text file. The server responds with the data. The server is not making any request to any database as of now. It's just sees a request coming to it, and it then responds with a request. Okay.
Yes, Bhaiya.
Okay, so we have seen that we have talked that the browser will see that the file that it receives has a type of HTML, so it will render the content on the screen of the user. But how is that content actually rendered to the screen? How will the browser do the calculations and to convert the text file into an HTML file and render all the content onto the screen? So let's see how this is done. So whenever the browser receives the text file with that HTML type header, as I already mentioned, firstly it knows that the file is an HTML, is an text kind of file. Okay, so it will first display all this text that is on the screen. On the file, that is all the text on the file will be displayed on the screen. And in the meantime, while these texts are being displayed, a DOM is created. A DOM is basically a document object model, which is basically a tree that contains the various texts associated with your HTML file. Like you write HTML tag, head tag, body tag, script, div tag, paragraph tag. All these tags come under this DOM tree. Okay, I'll show you the DOM tree in the next slide. And then in the meantime, a CSS OM tree is created. A CSS OM tree is basically a CSS object model tree, which contains this. It is also a tree which contains the details about the styling of your pages, the various styling for various elements that you have specified into your style.css file. Okay. And based on this document object model and CSS object model, a render tree is created. And this render tree is basically responsible for rendering the content on the screen. How does the render tree does it? Once the render tree is created, the render tree will send its data to a paint process. Okay, we already know that everything on our system, whatever the screen is divided into smaller pixels, right? You know this concept, right? Everything on the whatever any digital screen is divided into smaller pixels, and whatever we see is a combination of various colors on the based on the pixels values, right?
Yes, bhaiya.
Yeah.
Nishi, previous slide, please. Yes. So the render tree will send its content to a paint process, and this paint process is responsible for rendering the pixels on the screen. So whatever you see on the screen is basically some kind of paint applied by the paint process based on the various pixels. Okay. Next slide, please. I see a lot of people leaving the meeting. Are you guys not able to understand what I'm speaking?
Bhaiya, able to understand.
Yes. Someone was speaking something, please.
भैया पिक्सेल वाला पार्ट एक बार दोबारा समझाइए.
Okay. You know that the entire screen, any digital screen that you see, be it your desktop, your laptop, your mobile screen, is divided into very smaller pixels. Okay. Pixels are basically, it can be thought of in matrix, and with very smaller blocks divided. Suppose you see the slide on the right hand side, you see on the slide, you see a matrix being formed, right?
Yes, भैया.
So the pixels, the entire screen is divided into such kind of smaller pixels. Okay. And what does the render tree does? It render tree sends its data to the paint process. It is basically a browser process. Have you used Paint in your laptop?
Yes, भैया.
So it's kind of a paint process that is present in a browser. It is inbuilt in the browser, and which is responsible for painting those pixels onto the screen. Okay.
Okay, भैया.
And this is what I was talking about, the document object model. It contains the various HTML tags along with the association with the other nodes that are present into your website, into your file basically. The HTML contains the head and the body as their immediate neighbors or immediate child, and then the head has various tags like link, meta, and other tags like script tag and stuff. The body has various tags. So this complete thing forms the document object model. And a similar way, we have a CSS object model, which basically contains the styling based on this various elements. Okay. And the intersection of this document object model and the CSS object model is what forms the render tree. You see, there are certain tags here which are present in the document object model and the CSS object model, but it's not present in the render tree. This is because if you see that this span has a display of none. So we don't need to actually display this span. So the render tree will not contain this this element here. This is how the data that you see onto your onto your screen is being actually displayed using the render tree. Okay till here? If you're not familiar with not okay with the previous part, then I cannot explain this part. This is actually very, very challenging to understand if you have not understood the previous parts. Should I, or should I skip this part? Come on, anyone?
Yeah, give some idea. No, don't skip.
Okay. Did you guys understand the previous part?
Yes, Bhaiya.
Yes, Bhaiya.
Did you get the basic and basic idea of what was said?
Yes, Bhaiya.
Okay. So as I already mentioned, that the URL that you type is basically something governed under the DNS. As I already said, the domain name system, as the name stands for DNS. This DNS is basically responsible for converting your names into IP address. I said that we basically search any website by typing the URL. Okay, you are here, you are into the meet.google.com here, but what you did, you typed a link and you got this page, right? But this is not how actually things happen. Behind this is not how things and behind the scene happens. This as soon as you type a URL onto your browser, this URL is converted by the DNS into an IP address, and this then the browser receives this IP address, and this IP address is then makes a request to the server, and you get the web page. Okay, suppose if I type DSC and its.tech, then this request is then resolved into the specific respective IP address of 3.7.2.217.218, and then the request is to the server is made using this IP address. So if you type this or this, like the DSC and its.tech or this IP address, you'll get the same thing, same information. DNS is domain name system. It is a protocol. It is a network-based protocol that converts your names into your IP address. Suppose if you are typing DSC and its.tech, then the request to the server is not made using DSC and its.tech, but the respective IP address of the DSC and its.tech. So DNS is responsible for basically converting those names into the IP addresses. Okay. Are you with me here till here?
Yes, Bhaiya.
Yes, Bhaiya.
Yes, Bhaiya.
What did I say? DNS is responsible for converting your URLs into their respective IP addresses, and using these IP addresses, the browser makes a request to the server. Okay, it is not the URL that you're typing makes a request to the server. It is the converted IP address that makes a request to the server. Okay. But let's see how does this DNS actually works. I say that DNS resolves the names into the IP address, but there must be a certain mechanism associated with converting this DNS, these names into the IP addresses, right? So let's see how this is done. Whenever you type any URL into the web browser, the browser first checks for the same URL into your system cache. System cache is basically it can be also thought of a browser cache. It first checks for the same website into your browser cache. If the website is present into your browser cache, then the website will be directly written from this location to your browser, and you will be able to see the website. But in case you are visiting this website for the first time, then it will not be present into your browser cache, right? So in that case, the request will be forwarded to the resolver server. A resolver. What is cache? A cache is basically a kind of it's a memory that stores the history about that basically stores the history about your basically stores your browsing history. You can see it's kind of it's a very small memory, you can see. Okay.
Okay, Bhaiya.
What happens is I don't want to get into the details of cache memory, because what happens is the time taken to access the data from the main memory is higher as compared to the so we need certain mechanism to get the data in a faster way, and that is why we store those data into another kind of memory which is very fast as compared to our main memory, that is the cache. So browser also has some certain kind of cache associated with them. And if the data is not found in your cache memory or the browser cache, then it goes to the resolver server. A resolver server is basically, you can say, you all must be using either Idea, Jio, Airtel, Vodafone. So these people have a certain servers installed in certain specific regions, which contains the details about the various websites as well as their IP address. So ISP is basically the internet service provider. Okay, the internet service provider is basically the company that provides you the service for your internet. So if the request is not made to if the request is not fulfilled by the system cache or the browser cache, then it moves to the resolver server. The resolver server sees that if it has the same what you say, the URL being visited before. If that request is present there, then it will respond with the data, and you will be able to see the web page. Okay, and if it is not present there, then it will do the further processing. But before I move on to the further processing, did you guys understand this part?
Yes, Bhaiya.
I know it's kind of complicated. It's not that easy to understand and DNS and how DNS mechanism works. It's something like if you make a request, the request is not fulfilled by the system cache, then it moves to the resolver server, and if the resolver server can fulfill those requests, then it will redirect you to the website that you want to visit. If we search every time, the IP address will remain the same or not. IP address will remain the same or not. Well, the IP address, how do I say? If you have multiple servers installed, then the IP address may not be the same every time, because then comes the concept of load balancing and stuff. The server sees which server the request sees which server has maximum load, so the request will not be transferred to that server, rather will be transferred to the alternative server. Suppose the companies like Facebook, Google, they do not have their entire code hosted into a particular server, so they won't have a specific they have a specific IP address, but since they have hosted the same code into multiple servers across the world, so it depends on which it depends whether your request is made to which server. So the IP address may differ in that case. How does the ISP finds the address linked with the domain? Okay. So the internet service, for that you need to move on to the next part, because the data that comes from this next part will be stored into the resolver server, that is the ISP server. Okay, so let's move on to the next part, and then it will be clear that how this is actually done. So if the request that was made for the IP address is not fulfilled by the resolver server, then the request will be transferred to the root server. This root server is these are geographically or statistically placed in certain places of the entire world. Their main purpose is to redirect the request that is being made to the nearest TLD server. Or TLD server is basically a top level domain server. It can be the TLD server basically contains information about your .tech, .net, .com, .in, various kinds of domains that are available. It contains information about those servers. Okay. So the root server, once a request resolver is from the resolver request is made to the root server responds with an IP address of the TLD. The resolver then makes a request to the TLD server. The TLD server then sees, okay, I have a request with the domain of .tech. So I need to transfer this request to the .tech server. So what does it do? It supplies an IP address to the .tech server. These are the specific servers are known as the authoritative servers. So the resolver server will get an IP address of the authoritative server. So the resolver will then make a request to the authoritative server. The authoritative server, this authoritative server contains the actual information about the web page that is being that you need to access. Okay, it will contain the exact information about the DSC and ITS.tech as well as its IP address. So it will supply the supply with the IP address to the resolver. Now resolver sees, okay, I did not have this IP address before, but now I have this IP address. So let me store it into my system first, and then I will forward it to the browser. So it first stores the DSC and ITS.tech. It maps the DSC and ITS.tech with its IP address and stores it into its server. And then it sends the same data to the system cache. The system cache also sees that this website is being visited by the user for the first time. So let me store it into my cache also, and then the IP address is sent to the browser. The browser finally receives the IP address, and then it makes a request to the server. Okay. What is an authoritative server? Basically, this top level domains are what are top level domains? First, let's understand. These are basically the various domains available into the entire internet, be it .com, .net, .tech, .co, .in, anything, .org, anything. So these top level domains, the information of all the top level domains of the in this top level TLD servers for a specific region. So what does the TLD server do? The TLD server redirects the request to the specific domain server. Like is my request .tech, so my request will be transferred from this TLD server to a specific specific server, which owns information about .tech websites. Okay? The websites that domain of .tech, and this .tech website server is an authoritative server. Understood? Amog?
Yes, Bhaiya.
Any questions regarding this might not be clear to you guys, but anything that I can help you with? Any questions?
There's one more question as well. Like, repeat one. What is authoritative server?
I just say the same thing, Samir. Okay, I'll repeat it again. You see that the top level domains are basically the various domains present on the internet, like .tech, .com, .net, etc. So the top level domains contains information about all these domain servers, and the top level domain then transfers the request to a specific domain server. Like since it is a .tech server, so the request will be transferred to a .tech server. And this .tech server or the respective domain servers are the authoritative server. So we will have a authoritative server for .com domains. You will have a authoritative server for .net, .tech, and so on and so forth. So if any website with .tech extension will have a particular authoritative server. Like all the information about all the .tech domains will be stored in the authoritative server regarding that particular website and particular domain. Understood? I see no one responding. Like I can guess that no one has understood anything.
Yeah.
Is it the case? Is it the case? Like no one has understood anything? No? No? Or yes? What does this no stand for? No, did you not understand or did you understand? Deepak?
Yeah, we are reading it first time now, so we need just bit time to grasp. Otherwise, we have understood what is this.
I'll just give you an overview again. Like the DNS is basically resolves your domain names into the URLs into their specific IP addresses. Was your second no was for your second question? What was my second question? I actually forgot. Anyways, so I'll explain it again. DNS resolves the names to your respective IP address. Through this IP address, the requests to the servers are made. Okay. The browser receives these IP addresses and then it makes a request to the server. We say that we are typing DSC and its.tech or google.com, so the request is made through the google.com. But this is not the case. The request is actually made through the IP address associated with google.com. Okay. So how does this actually happen? The browser first sends the request. So the request first reaches the system cache or the browser cache. If the website has already been visited by the user, that the information will already be present in the browser cache, and hence the browser cache will respond with the website. If not, it will forward the request to the resolver server. If the website is already visited by all the various users of the particular ISP in that particular area, then the details will be present in the resolver server. Else, else the resolver server will redirect the request to the root server. The root server basically contains information about all the top level domains. So it will redirect the request to a top level domain, to the nearest top level domain. This top level domains contains the information about the various top level domains like .tech, .net, .org. It contains a specific IP address of these various domains, and hence it redirects the request to an authoritative server, which is a specific server for a particular domain. And this authoritative server contains the information about that particular website or the URL.
You are not audible, Ujjwal. Is it for me or is it for
I
everyone?
guess it's some net issues.
Yeah.
So, so Nishi, I guess you can move to the next slide. Or
Wait a minute. Ujjwal? He left. Okay, okay. I will continue. Next slide, Nishi. So whatever Ujjwal told you guys, like we would have easily moved on to the part like installing Node, writing code in Node.js, but the point was to like give you a like overview of how the actually things work in the backend, what is the core concept behind this, right? So the main idea was to give you a little bit knowledge about that. You will get familiar with this thing, how actually this thing works once you like research on this, you read about this more. This was just your basic introduction. You were just listening this for the first time, so might be weird, but like not weird, like maybe, but for first, this is for the first time, so maybe you feel it's a bit tough, but it's not like that. So as a backend developer, you focus on how your website. Yeah. Yes.
I
What
shall
we should?
continue, or I shall continue from this slide.
Yeah, I will manage. Hold on.
Okay. Okay.
So what?
Sorry, it just got disconnected.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So you were done or something left to do?
And I guess I explained the part. If you have any doubts, then we can discuss it at the end of the session. So you can continue from here, I guess.
Someone is raising hand here. Pallavi. Yeah.
Yes, Pallavi.
I think it was a mistake.
I guess it was a mistake. Okay.
So-
Okay, Samir, you can continue.
Yeah. So as a backend developer, you focus on how your website going to work. Like you talked about, you just Ujjwal mentioned that the data comes from the backend, all the requests and from the DNS, all the things. So the data comes from the backend. So that backend logic, how the server side is going to work, actually, that as a backend developer, you focus on those things. So there are different technologies that you work on. What did you work on for this thing, right? PHP was used initially, Ruby, other Python. Using Python, there's another technology. So for you can do this using Python or what. Node was released around 2009, I think. After the Node is very popular because of its asynchronous behavior. It's much faster than PHP. So like nowadays, Node is much popular. Also, you can build the server side using Java. So there are different languages which you can use for server-side programming. It totally depends on you upon the requirements, like what do you need actually, what do you want to build. So that depends specifically upon applications, right? So next slide, Nishi, just move to next slide. So along with these technologies, there are certain framework. There are different frameworks that you can use with those technologies for building server side. Like just telling you the names will tell you about those, how actually these things work. But just telling you the names so you just remember the names. So there are different frameworks like Rails, Django, or in Python. We have to use all. No. You don't need to use all the languages. For that thing that. For example, let's consider right now I'm working on Node. I'm working on Node.js right now. Let's consider that after 5 years, it's not necessary then that only Node will be the language, or just the technology that I showed you in the previous slide. These will be these will be the only languages after 5 years. There might be a new language much better, much faster. Like technology is evolving, right? So you don't know what's going to happen next. So you just need to evolve with time along with that. So after 5 years, you can move on to other language. It's just right now what you want to do. You can go ahead with anyone. So you said you want to learn one. You don't need to learn all the languages. You can be very good at in one. And the idea that what I have experienced in last 2 years, that It does not depend much on the language what you are using. If you know the concept that how the logic is going to be for your task that you are going to build, you can write this thing in any language, irrespective of language. Just what where language makes the difference is the syntax thing. When syntax come, if you want to write something in Python, you need to know Python first, right? If you are working on Node.js, you need to know JavaScript first. But the logic isn't going to change now. You want to fetch details of a user. Yeah.
Don't speak so fast, Bhaiya.
Okay, no worries. So what I was saying, actually, I forgot what I was saying. So where was I? So yeah, for example, you are fetching details of a user from the database. So that's a simple thing, like just the idea is simple, that you want to fetch details of a user from the database. Now you do that thing in JavaScript or Python or C++ or any Java, any language. You do that in any language that is independent of the thing that you want to do. Eventually you want to retrieve the data of that user, right? So the core concept isn't going to change. It's just the syntax or the language that you are using. So you don't need to learn all the languages. You can be good in one. You can be good in more than one. But it just depends, right? So yeah. So these were the different frameworks that you can use with the languages. And yeah, so I talked about the data. Usual said many things about data, how the data comes. So there should be something that manages your data, right? The data management system should be there for your database, right? For your data that manages your system. So that's basically is a database. And there are different databases, type of database. Like there are like two types of database that we say. One is SQL and other is NoSQL. So SQL we said SQL and NoSQL, the two types of databases. Relational and non-relational. Relational, we also classify them as relational database and non-relational database. Which database are we are going to use? Yeah, just which, which database we are going to. Well, for now we will be using NoSQL database. We will use, and in NoSQL database we will be using MongoDB for now. So again, this depends, like what you are trying to build. That depends. There are certain scenarios where SQL database is preferred and NoSQL database is preferred. So it completely depends upon the situation, that what you want to build and what is more suitable for you. And I will explain you about the databases. Just so there are different databases that are used. MySQL, this is SQL type database, and as MongoDB, this is NoSQL. Oracle, again, this is MySQL is powered by Oracle, basically. Postgre, again, this is SQL database. So let me tell you about the file system, about the management of data. Like how do we manage data actually? All right, so let me tell you about that thing. Then we will move on to Node.js that we will be going to use in our session with technology, right? We will brief you about a little bit about Django also, but in this session we will be using Node.js, right? Nishi, you can move on to next slide. Yeah, this is just a single line for file system and a single line for DBMS, but it's not that simple. It's much more complicated. Like if I would have tried to add more about file system, like it's complete different. I need more than one or more than two or three sessions. File system is a completely different topic, and same for DBMS. So in short, basically what is I told you about the data, right? So I told you about data. So basically, a database is a collection of data, right? What is a database? Database is a collection of data which describes like a collection of certain entities, right? Consider a situation, consider a database of our institute, right? So our data of our institute, there are different type of data, right? Data of students, data of faculties, data of professors, data of like certain workers working in our institute, right? So that's a whole collection of data. It's basically a database, right? So now when it comes to the like management of data, like there are different ways, like yeah. So one is that we can store data like there's a software in operating system known as file system. Like you heard about NTFS in Windows. You would have heard about NTFS, like yeah, have you heard ever about NTFS?
Yes, Bhaiya.
Yeah, NTF and FAT.
The support FAT is basically file allocation table. Yeah. So FAT was used initially, but now after Windows 98 or Windows XP, I think it supports NTFS. I think after Windows XP it supports NTFS. Maybe 98 also. So
I know it from XP that it supports NTFS. I don't know about previous versions.
XP supports. I'm not sure about 90, but I think it does. So okay. So basically, what I was trying to tell you about the file system. So basically, what it does for us, it manages the files. Basically, files. It's the directory that you see in your system are also files. Basically, these are also files. So in a files, basically, what file system does for it organizes files for us. The file system basically what allows you to access the files, the read the files, create the files, all the things that you can do with your files are because of the file system software that the operating system included in itself. This because the file system that you can do all the things, right? So there for like I'm not trying, like if I will go more deep, like that's a completely different topic, so I'm just trying to give you an overview of this. So like without file management it would be really difficult to manage all the files. Like imagine how tough it will be to manage. Like you can simple take a simple example that you cannot have two files with the same name in the same directory, right? So if there is no file management, how can you how would you manage all the things, right? You cannot manage. So you need a file system that manages all the things, right? So generally there are different ways in which file system stores your data. So most often it is stored in the hierarchical form. So there is a set hierarchy in the data, right? You see that what is let me also tell you about the hierarchy. So basically you see your system, there's a hierarchy that's hierarchical file system. What happens there are drives, inside the drives there are folders, inside the folders there are files, right? So you see that in proper that hierarchy, there's certain hierarchy that you see. Are you getting what I am trying to say, right? Someone please respond at least. Yeah.
Yes, Bhaiya.
Yeah. So
Yes, Bhaiya.
there's certain hierarchy. So that hierarchy makes it easier for us to access the files, right? So that file system is basically making it easier for us to access the files. But there are certain disadvantages. There are certain disadvantages with the file system. Let me tell you about the disadvantages and the way to how we can overcome them. So one of the major let's consider I was mentioned as I mentioned example of the our institute data, right? So first of all as the size increases the disk in which you are storing the data, you need a memory to store all the data at a single place, right? So you need that memory. So first of all that's the memory issue. And once it's still wait a minute, someone's trying to join, let me accept that. Yeah. So so let's, even if you have that much amount of memory, so consider that when you ask about a data, when you want to search for a data, you need to inside a large volume. It's quite complex when you want to search for the data. Like if it's unorganized, if it's organized, then it's much easier. But if it is not organized, then it's much more complex. Wait a minute, someone is again trying to join. Okay. So it's more complex to search all the data, right? Take another example, one more thing, that there should not be inconsistent changes in the data, right, by different users. Like for example, two users are accessing the same data at the same time, right? And one makes the changes to the data, then the change should not affect the changes that the other user was trying to do, right? You're getting my point. The concurrency at the same time, if you would try to change the data. For let's take an example of a transaction. There's certain amount of there's certain amount in your bank account, and you do a transaction at a certain place, and you try to do another transaction at another place at the same time. So that that concurrency, you cannot debit more than the amount that already that is there in your account, right? So there should be that concurrency should be mentioned, that the consistency should be maintained while these concurrent actions, right? So in file system we need to implement those things different again and again, so that the consistency in the data should be maintained. So that is one thing. And another thing is that for example, again take the example of the transaction. So if you are doing a transaction and your transaction fails, so that your data should be brought back to the consistent state, to the main state where it was, right? If the transaction fail, that much amount should be there again in your account, right? That cannot be that cannot be like that you debited, right? So that consistency should be maintained. So there are different issues with file system. And another issue, let me tell you about security. Like when it comes to operating system, so what happens, there is a password for the root user that you log in, you access all the files, and when you want to implement the security at different levels, so then again it becomes difficult. You can do that obviously, but it becomes complex and more difficult to do that in a file system. So there are certain points where like file system has many drawbacks that we have. So basically what we can do to avoid those all these things, we have a database management system. So you will be going to study this as a whole subject in your upcoming semester. So this is a huge subject, but let me give you an overview of this. What is a database management system basically? So database management system basically makes it easier for you to manage and store and retrieve all the, like storing the files and retrieving the files. So this, all these things becomes much more easier with a database management system basically, that allows you to do the things more efficiently, like accessing the data, updating the data, storing the data. All the things are done in much more efficient manner and in a better way, in a much more organized way by using a DBMS. So that's a database management system. So I told you about the drawbacks of the file system. So basically, DBMS covers almost maximum of those drawbacks. One of the major, like the consistency thing that I told you, the security that I told you, the privacy basically, and the easier access to the data, and the crash, the example that I gave you with the system, if your system crashes, in the recovery for the data, and also the flexibility thing. So DBMS provide you more flexibility of. There are certain advantages of DBMS along with some disadvantages. So there are some disadvantages, like when you compare it DBMS with a file system, like it's much more like the cost is much more high of a DBMS. The complexity of a DBMS is much more, like things for us becomes easier, but the software, when we talk about the software, the complexity of that software increases. So, and also its performance depends upon, like for example, they are generic, but for example, there certain DBMS is defined for a specific application, that then it affect the, if we use that DBMS in another application, then it will affect the performance. So there are certain advantages, certain disadvantages, but surely the drawbacks that the file system has, it overcomes certain drawbacks also. So okay, so I told you about DBMS. So there are different types of database. Initially I told you SQL database, NoSQL database. So what happens in NoSQL database, and what happens in NoSQL database? Yeah, SQL and NoSQL. So SQL is basically more of a relational database management system. It is also known as RDBMS, and NoSQL is a non-relational database management system. So when you talk about SQL, so what happens in SQL? Your data is completely stored in the form of tables, like columns and rows, right? Are you getting how is it stored? Basically, there are set columns and there are rows. So for each column there is a value. For example, one column represents the ID and the second column represents the name. So then each row like signifies the data for like each row signifies a unique data, right? So for each ID there will be a name. So in relational database system, in SQL database, basically the data is stored in form of tables, where the tables are formed of rows and columns. While in NoSQL database, it is stored in form of documents. Basically, it is stored in the form of the documents, like I will told you about. If just a minute, just open the next. Go to the next slide, Nishi. Yeah, so you can see this image here. This is a kind of a document in which how NoSQL stores the data, like this format. So there are certain key value pairs, like you can see the ID, if there's a value for ID, you can see the name, so there's a value for name. But when you talk about SQL database, there are tables with rows and columns. So in NoSQL in SQL database, as I said, there are tables, rows and columns. So you have a predefined schema, right? For having a column, you should have a you should have a header for that column. Na? You should have a header for that column, then you will define that column. So there is a predefined schema in SQL database. While in NoSQL database, you can have a dynamic schema. Like you can see in this slide, this document contains 4 things: ID, name, email, password. Like if this collection has another document, you can add another value also, another key you can add another key which will have another something which will have some value for it. So this is a dynamic example of a dynamic schema. While in SQL database you have a fixed schema, like certain columns, and each row signifies the value of a certain kind of. There are no document, there are rows in the SQL database. So so there, as I said, it depends upon the situation, like where you are using where are you using the database. So it depends, completely depends upon the situation. Like for example, you want to have some complex queries, so SQL is more preferred. Like because since it is a relational database, so it's much faster and it's much more easier in SQL database to query things. While no SQL database, when it comes to like query complex, it is you want to like make some complex queries, it's not that much, it's not that good for in NoSQL database. Also NoSQL database is more preferred when you need some hierarchy in the data storage, so you can prefer the NoSQL database. But if you have some like a kind of hierarchical kind of a structure, then you would like to prefer NoSQL, you would not prefer SQL. So it completely depends upon the situation, what type of database you want to use. So for now we will be using MongoDB. In our session we will one of the some famous like not famous, some common data systems that DBMS basically that are more common. For in NoSQL the mostly used one is MongoDB. In SQL, like MySQL is mostly used. So in our session we will be using NoSQL database, and in NoSQL we will be using MongoDB. So yeah, just go to the next slide, Nishi. So yeah, this is for the MongoDB. Yeah. Go back. This is for the MongoDB. Yeah, so basically, in MongoDB, it's simply I already told you, it stores our data as in the form of collections, and every collection has certain documents. You create documents and stores your data in the form of documents. So that's basically the no what do you say NoSQL database. So this was about the database. Like, you got the point, like what I was trying to tell you, using the file system, the database system. Is it easy to access data in SQL or no SQL? Yeah, it depends. As I told you, it depends. Like if you have much more, if there are complex queries, then you would like to prefer SQL. If there are like not so much complex queries, then you can prefer NoSQL. And also, when you talk about SQL, so there is a query language for that, but in NoSQL there's no structure that kind of list. SQL basically stands for structured query language basically. Where is the database physically present? Physically is like physically basically what happens, like it's you can imagine that your data is stored on someone else computer. You can imagine like that. So on that computer there are documents in NoSQL. The data is stored in the form of documents, and yeah, on others computer, when you are using the Atlas version of the database, you can you install MongoDB, and you can create your own database, and the database will be simply stored in the data will be simply stored in your system only. So that's it's just it does depend which database you are using. The Atlas version, you can make your system as a server. So that's completely
Um,
depends.
just to add into this point, Samir, and as he mentioned, as he asked that how is the data physically present, stored, right? So in a particular system, the database is basically stored in the form of file systems only. The disk, it is stored in the operating system level in the forms of disk and files into your drive. It's basically implemented in a file format only, but there are certain rules for implementing those things, and which we do not have to maintain, and that is being maintained by the database management system itself.
Yeah, like you know about the files, like there's I told you about the file system. So basically in file system we store the files, so there when you talk about files, there are different type of files. Again, I don't want to go deep into that, like different type of file. The file is how a file is defined, the file type, the extensions. I don't want to go deep into that. So there's a different thing. Yeah. Anything else? Otherwise, we'll move on to Node.js basically, and we'll move on to the installation part, and again start with the coding part.
Do you guys have any doubts regarding whatever has been explained till now?
I understand this was a quite
Anyone?
this much part was quite theoretical last 1 hour, but like this was important to just give a like little introduction about the how things actually how what is the core concept actually. So the main idea was that. So yeah, last 1 hour was a little more theoretical, but like as I said, was more conceptual. Okay, so Rishiraj, you can continue. Rishiraj, are you here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, let me ask you guys one question. Shall I start with coding, or shall you want to see some other slides, some more slides? Tell me. You guys tell me. Anyone? Anyone coding? Okay. Niranjan Shah is saying coding.
We are
Okay.
coding.
Okay. So let me give you a brief summary of what Node.js is and the rest of the slides. Then in the next slide, we will move in. In 2 minutes, I will move in coding. Okay. So what is Node.js? I understand. I completely understand that there might be some of the topics which might be difficult for you to understand, because some of the second year members were also attending this session. So we included some of the advanced topics of backend. Otherwise, if you at least gain 50% of the topics that we discussed today, you will be at a lot of advantage. Okay. So now again, starting from where we left, what is Node.js? You guys have used JavaScript. Okay. And if I go too fast, then stop me. Okay. What is Node.js? You guys have used JavaScript. So before Node.js came in, there was no way to use JavaScript out of our server, out of our browser. That means we could only use JavaScript in our browser locally, but there was no way to use JavaScript to connect with the server and perform functionalities there. There was no way to use JavaScript to store data from the server, from the client side to the server to the database. So Node.js gave us a way to run JavaScript on the server side application and to do functions in our server. Okay. Some of the main advantages of the Node.js are, it is written here. It is non-blocking, asynchronous. What is non-blocking and asynchronous? We will see in the next slide, and I will start coding from there. Nishi, next slide, please. It is written about Express. Okay, I will skip this slide because you want me to go to the coding. Okay, so now I will start the coding part. I will show you guys an interesting thing. Okay, so Nishi, I want you to stop presenting. I want to present. Wait a second. I will show you guys what asynchronous Node.js is basically. 2 minutes. Is my screen visible?
Yes, Bhaiya.
My screen is visible, right? Okay. So now we will
Yes,
see
yeah.
what asynchronous Node.js is. Okay, I know I'm presenting. Wait a minute. Just a minute. So all of you open your Visual Studio course for that time when I'm opening my editor. Okay, all of you have opened your editor, right? Visual Studio's code.
Yes, yeah.
Recording. Okay, so this is how your directory might look like if you have attended the previous sessions. You have your form, you have your index.html, you have your project page.html that you have done. Now I also gave one form.html that we will be using when we when we connect backend and frontend together. So I want you guys to make one file. I want you guys to make one, not folder. I want you guys to make one file. Okay, that will be an JS file. We will name that file async.js. That will give us that file as JavaScript extension. Okay, so let's open that file. Now I will show you about the asynchronous behavior of node. So you made that file, everyone? Hello? Everyone made that file, right? Async.js. Now what I will do, I will write some functions.
Yeah, you can just write the code because you will be not able to run that file because you haven't installed Node yet. Like Node yet. How many of you have already installed Node? Like
Bhaiya,
I I gave the link in the description in the that post. How many of you installed? Yeah.
Okay, then I will show you.
Yeah. Those who have installed can run the also run the code, but those who haven't just can see for now. Like we will install the node after this file after running this file. Okay.
Okay, wait a minute. My file, my system shows.
Bhaiya, can I run it online?
Yeah, you
Online,
can. You can. You
yeah,
can.
yeah.
If you can. If you you can do one thing. Okay, just otherwise you can do all the things in the console also for now. But okay, you can do that online.
Nishi, you can show that console, that async.js file. Oh, no, I am presenting, right? Wait a minute. Let my system understand it.
Bhaiya, if I make that JS file in that JavaScript folder, I have to link it with my HTML, or it's
No.
okay with me?
It's an independent file. You don't need to do anything else. Okay.
Okay, bhaiya.
Wait a second. My system is.
Do you all have Node.js installed in your systems? Everyone?
That's what I just asked. This like some of them have already installed, some of them haven't.
Okay. Others? You won't be able to run the code if you don't have Node.js installed. That is the issue. You can write the code, but you won't be able to see that happening.
Yeah, you Ujjwal, this console thing would do for now.
Yes, but your console.
Can't do
Yeah.
anything. You can watch it
No,
again
no,
later.
no,
Okay.
no, someone said that. Someone said he isn't having his
Okay.
PC.
Okay.
Uh, like for the code, like you will install Node. Just you will like go
Okay.
to once how to install Node. Just for now, you can just use your like console of your web browser. Like that will do the job.
Before that, let me do one thing. I will show you the code then in the presentation itself. Nishi, please start the presentation again because my that system is not responding.
Yeah, sure.
Nishi, please start the code again. Yeah.
Rishita, your video got stuck, or like you can turn off your camera. I think that much better. Will be much better. It will be much better. Then. Yeah, but at least you will be audible.
Yeah. What is asynchronous behavior of Node.js? Okay. Now let me explain you guys what is asynchronous with the help of an example. What is asynchronous with the help of an example? Nishi, please move on to that asynchronous slide. Next. Okay. Actually, yeah, this one. Now, what is asynchronous actually? What does asynchronous actually mean? Let us suppose you and me are in a restaurant. I like to use the restaurant example to explain what asynchronous basically is. Like, let us say that you and me are in a restaurant. Now the waiter comes to me, takes my order, and he goes to the chef and gives my order. While he is preparing my order, the waiter again comes to you to take your order. Okay, he is not waiting for the chef to complete his order, then he will come to you to take his order. But what the waiter is doing, while the chef is preparing his order, he is again coming to you and taking your order and giving to the chef back. What I am trying to basically say is, asynchronous basically means that when we run a function that requires time to complete, we are not waiting for that function to finish while we move on to the next function. Okay, so what asynchronous basically means is we are not waiting for that function to complete At the same time, we are moving to the next function and taking that response. For example, let's see this in the left slide. That is, I have written console log. Then I have written many functions that you might not understand for the time being, but I will tell you what these functions basically does. This console.log, what this console.log basically does. Console.log, what it does, this is my console. This is known as in your if any one of you have installed Node, then you can run these lines. You will see the same output here in your console. What this console.log is basically that it logs something, it prints something in your console. Okay, so I have written console.log first line. Then I have the second function is console.log second line. Then the third statement is console.log third line. And I have written a set timeout. Now what this set timeout is? Set timeout basically is a example of asynchronous function. That is, this function takes some time to complete. I have given here the time, set timeout, and I have said that you need to run this function after you have completed 2000 milliseconds. Okay. So what it does is set timeout actually will action after 2000 seconds. That means Node will come to set timeout. It will wait for 2000 seconds and 2000 milliseconds, and then it will log console.log. Now, according to this, if you might think that we will get the output first line, second line after 2000 millisecond, and then the third line. But that is not we are getting. See, we are getting the output as first line, then this fifth third line, and then this third second line after 2000 milliseconds. Can anyone say me why this is happening? Can anyone say me why this is happening? Anyone who have studied about the asynchronous? No one? Okay, so let me explain you what is basically happening. Now how does Node functions? That is what I am trying to say, that it will go to the console log first line, then it will encounter an asynchronous function, and without waiting for that function to complete, it will then move to the third line. That is, it will finish this third line, and after this function has completed 2000 seconds, then it will print the this function, this console.log thing will run. Okay, any one of you who have not understood this thing, please respond in the chat box also, if anyone. Okay, so let's move to the next slide then. Nishi, next slide. Okay, now REST APIs. REST APIs is an important part of backend, I would say. Okay, the asynchronous nature is Node.js specifically or JavaScript? No, asynchronous is specifically for Node.js. It is not for JavaScript. Okay, the asynchronous behavior of Node.js basically gives us that feature, so it is quite popular nowadays. Okay, so that is why it is quite popular. Now I would like to speak about the REST APIs. What is REST APIs, you might ask? REST APIs are basically representational state transfer. REST stands for representational state transfer, and API stands for application processing interface. Now, REST APIs are very important. They are very, very important for the backend part. Okay. Now, what is API, you might ask, and what is REST? I would like to explain that thing part by part to all of you. Now, what is API? API is something, you know that how backend and frontend works. First, we send a request to the server. The server then sends a response to us. This is what is known as API. Okay. Now, what is REST? Now, REST basically means that REST basically stands for representational state transfer. Now, what is this? They are stateless backends. Okay. Their job is to act on a particular endpoint. For example, what is endpoint? This /API/user. When you hit a browser, when you hit a website, you click on a certain link, right, which has /user/task, etc. So this REST does the job of taking that /API/user. It tells the server where to it takes that /API/user with the help of get, post, put methods, which we will discuss today. Okay. And then what it does, the server sends some data back to the client side. Now when it sends, it usually sends the data in the form of JSON or any text file. Now while sending, we will not show to the client side the JSON data. What I'm trying to say that from the server it is sent to the client in one form. In one form it is sent to the client, and in the client side that data is again converted to HTML JavaScript that you have learned. So this is the state transfer which I am talking about. So together both of these things make REST APIs. Okay. Now let's move on to the next slide. Different types of method. These are very important. Okay, these are very important. Different types of HTTP methods. This means what are methods, you might ask. Anyone? Does anyone know what are methods? Anyone who might want to respond in the chat box also? Anyone? Or any doubt till now? Functions. Methods are functions, you are saying. Okay. So let me tell you, methods are not functions. Methods are requests, ways to interact with the server. Yeah, Deepak, you're right. Methods are requests that we send to the server to do a particular job. Okay, methods are requests. I'm repeating again. Methods are requests that we send to the server to do a particular job. For example, we have the get request, we have the post request, we have the put and patch request, and we have the delete request. These are the types of requests we send to the server to do a particular thing. Now, what is get request? We use the get request to when we want to retrieve some data from the server. That is, we want to get some data from the server. For example, when you click on a user on Instagram or anything on Facebook, we send the get request to the server. That is, we are saying that we want the data from the database of that user to us. We want to get the information from the database. That is what get request is. Now what is post request? Now we will discuss about post request. What is post request? Post request is something when we want to request the server to save something in the database, Okay. We are saying that submit some data in the server. Okay. From server it is saved in the database. For example, when you upload your profile picture, you send a post request to the server. I'm saying the server that this is my profile picture, you save it in the database. So we are sending a post request. Now what is put and patch request? When we want to update the data that is already present in the server, we use a put or a patch request. Okay. Now where to use what? We have put requests also, we have patch requests also. Now where to use what? What are the differences between them? I will tell you the differences between them. Put request is something when we want to change all the data that is present in all the data about a user. For example, everything about that user has changed, his profile, his location, everything that is not related to the user. Actually, let's assume that it's an object, it's an parcel, not parcel, it's a good. It's a good, and everything about that has changed, his price, its manufacturer, everything has changed. Then we will use put request. Now when we use patch request, we use the patch request when we want to change only a certain field of the data that is saved in the server. Okay, that is saved in the database. For example, when you change your username, you send a patch request to the server. Now delete request, as the name suggests, it is used when we want to delete something from the database. Now I guess this ends our PPT. Now we will start coding, and Milind will show you guys how to install Node in your system. So Milind.
Yeah,
Okay,
one more thing. You talked about, he said about the methods. So methods, basically what methods do? Methods acts like a function. Basically, there are certain statements in the method that those are executed when a method is called. So on a broader aspect, like method is basically, it is related to an object. Basically, it is associated with an object. Like that object, where like we assume that that object is related to any class. So that object is instance of that class, and then that method, we call that method on that object, that particular object. So basically it acts like a function. There are certain statements, and those are executed, so you can read the method like that. Yeah, Milind, you can continue.
Okay, am I audible?
Yeah, you can continue.
Oh, okay. So for the people who haven't got the link, I'm sending the link on the chat box, in the chat box. Okay, so Nishi, can you turn off your presentation? Yeah, is my screen visible?
Yes, William, it is.
Okay. Okay. So when you click on the link, this is the website you will be directed to. Now, I suggest you download the LTS version, but if you download the current version, it won't give you all that much difference. Click on the Windows installer if you are on Windows, and just click it. Automatically downloads a 64-bit version, and most of you should have a 64-bit computer, so just go on ahead. After it is downloaded, just run it. Okay, so after you see this page or window, it's a pretty simple and straightforward process. Click on next, accept the terms and the rest. This is the main directory that you are going to install it to. If you want to install it in some other directory, you can change it if you want. And you don't have to change anything here because most of it is like the standard procedure. And if you do not have Visual Studio build tools, then you can check the screen, but it's not necessary. And after that, you can just press install, and yeah, let's wait. Okay, so after you have fully installed the Node.js, you have to check right whether it is installed or not. So you can open your command prompt, press Windows R and write CMD. It's just a shortcut, and then you'll see the command prompt. Here, just write node -b. After you write this, you'll get the version of Node that you have installed, which is 14.15.4, which is the one that is written here. You can also give another command to check the npm version, which is npm/-v. This is 6.14.10. So yeah, if you get these lines of code, this output, then you have successfully installed Node.js. So those who haven't installed it, please do so because it is very easy and straightforward, and it is necessary for the code that we are going to show you next. So yeah, I'm going to stop presenting. If anyone has doubts, you can write it on the chat box. I'll give you any tips or something. So yeah.
भैया मेरे में npm 7.5.2 दिखा रहा है.
Okay, that's no issue.
Yeah, that's no issue. If any one of you is getting any error, then show that error in the group, or we will start with
Yeah,
database.
if anyone has any problems, you can share the screenshot in the WhatsApp group. I can see it there.
Now I guess if no one of you have any doubts, then Debo, I would like you request you to help them in making the database.
Okay, thank you, Midin and Rishiyas. Now, I would like to start how to make the database using MongoDB. So let me share my screen. Wait. Is it visible?
Yes,
Bhaiya.
भैया.
Yes.
Okay. Now I have given a link in the chat box. You can see. So you can click the link. Then you will be redirected to this page. Then if you already have an account, then wait a second. If you already have an account, you can log in, or else I will like sign up and make the whole thing. Wait. Like you can choose a email of your choice and then the name. Like company name, you can choose student. Job, also you can choose a student, and then with the country name, obviously India.
If any one of you are getting any error, then don't leave the meeting. You can simply show your error in the group itself. Any one of us will help you.
Yeah, please. Like I will sign up now. Hope everybody is signed up. Like it's creating an account. I would like the other way around. So you can press your script, or you can do it from here also. It's all your choice, but I like the other way around. Are you guys following? Anyone can respond like,
Yes, Bhaiya.
okay, like you are redirected to this page or something else? Like I will create a free cluster because
Yeah, Vinayak was telling something. Yes, Vinayak.
okay, sure. Vinayak, you can tell.
No, Bhaiya, I said that same page we have got.
Okay.
भैया company name.
Company name, you can give a student or something. Student, well, give it a student. I gave it a student. Okay. Like you are stuck in the sign up process or what?
Sign up भैया.
Okay. After you complete sign up, then shall I continue, or like I can continue now itself?
Debo, I think
थोड़ी
you
देर
can-
रुकिए भैया.
Oh, okay, sure.
But we will also give you a ready-made database link, okay? So if you guys are having any problem, you can use the database for the time being. Debo, you just show the process. We will give
Okay.
database link.
Now, like the cloud provider in region, AWS is mostly preferred, and like keep it as default, and here you can change the cluster name. So I would keep it as cluster or something. Then create cluster. It will start creating a cluster. It will take 2 to 3 minutes. So meanwhile, we have to do two other things, like the database access and the network access part. Okay, let me just show you. I will start with the network access, like who can access this database. So for now, like I will click on the allow access from anywhere part. it will allow you to like connect from anywhere and from other developers also to connect. So I will confirm this thing. Okay, so as you can see,
भैया
it's
साइन
like
अप के
added.
बाद क्या करे फिर से दिखाइए ना थोड़ा।
लाइक पीछे तो नहीं जा सकता ना। उसके बाद कुछ स्किप करने का ऑप्शन आता है, वहां पे देखो ना।
वहां पर क्या जावास्क्रिप्ट दे दूं ना?
लाइक वहां से भी कर सकते हो। मैं लाइक आई प्रेफर द अदर वे राउंड, समझे ना। तो वहां पे स्किप करने के बाद क्रिएट ए क्लस्टर लाइक कैसे कुछ आता है, देखो तो।
रुक जाओ मैं देख रहा हूँ। लोडिंग ले रहा है ये।
हाँ, ये साइट थोड़ा स्लो है लाइक।
भैया चूज ए पाथ आया है एक।
चूज ए पाथ
सर फ्री वाला एक है।
हाँ, फ्री चूज ए क्लस्टर वैसा कुछ। हाँ, फ्री वाला।
हाँ, क्रिएट ए क्लस्टर आया है।
हाँ, ये वाला लाइक इज दिस पेज रेंडरिंग और समथिंग लाइक दिस?
भैया वो क्या AWS कौन सा वाला दूं? गूगल क्लाउड?
AWS दो।
और क्लस्टर नेम क्लस्टर 0।
क्लस्टर नेम वो तुम चेंज कर सकते हो, या फिर क्लस्टर नेम लाइक you can keep it anything you want. There is no hard and fast rule about it. Like.
और कोई तो सेटिंग्स मतलब चेंज नहीं करना है?
हाँ, उसके बाद लाइक नेटवर्क एक्सेस में मैं एक सेटिंग चेंज किया। वहाँ पे ऐड IP एड्रेस करो।
नेटवर्क एक्सेस।
ओके।
क्लस्टर क्रिएट करने के बाद नेटवर्क एक्सेस आता है क्या?
नहीं, अरे like when the cluster is created, like it will take 2 to 3 minutes to like it to create. In the meantime I was it's created for me, so in the meantime I was like changing the settings for the network access and the database access. So the network access I changed, like I added an IP address. So you will I'm not getting here since I have already added. Wait, let me delete this and I will add again. Okay. Are you rendering this page?
क्लस्टर क्रिएट करने के बाद ये आता है ना?
नहीं, क्लस्टर क्रिएट करने के बाद नहीं, मतलब ये वाला पेज देख रहे हो क्या?
हाँ, मैं ये देख रहा हूँ।
हाँ, तो फिर अभी नेटवर्क एक्सेस में आओ।
हाँ, नेटवर्क एक्सेस।
Okay. So add an IP address.
Add an IP address.
Allow access from anywhere.
Allow access from anywhere.
Access from anywhere. Okay. Then confirm the thing.
ठीक है। हो गया भैया।
Then database access. Click on the database access part.
Database access. हाँ भैया।
Add a new database user.
Add a new database user. पासवर्ड क्या डालूं?
Password, like it all depends on you know what you keep like.
मतलब वो साइन अप करते वक्त जो डाला था?
नहीं, ये डेटाबेस को एक्सेस करने के लिए। वो तो दूसरा था, वो तो क्या साइन अप था। Like they are different. Okay. So give a username. So I will keep like Debo01 and a password of my choice, obviously. Like here you can see there are options for temporary users. So this is all you don't require now. So I will add this as user. Then
make sure that you don't use special characters in the password, else the password will have to be URL encrypted. So make sure that you just use simple alphabetical characters or numbers.
भैया टेम्पोररी यूजर और क्या दूं?
Like no need to click on that option. Like database access, let me show you again. Add. You will just give a username and a password. Okay. Then add new user. Okay, then the cluster part, come here. Are you following? Are you guys following?
Yes, Bhaiya.
Okay. Then click on the collections part. Here we will create the database. Add my own data. You can give a database name and a collection name. Let me just give. So your database will be created as soon as you click on create option. So now everything is ready for you. So in order to connect with the cluster, with what cluster basically is creating a space on the cloud. So connecting to connect with it, click on the connect button. Then connect with your application. Then you can just copy this path, and the rest would be showed by Rishiraj, I guess. But have a note on one thing. Here you have to change password with the password you just use for the database access part, and the database name which you just keep, which is just keep it for the collection. I went to the collection route. You have seen, no? So you have to give the database name here. So you can start coding with connecting with the database. And this is what I was supposed to do, and it was that simple. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone
Debo.
have any? Okay.
Okay. Ask your doubts. Anyone have
Okay.
any doubt? Because we will
Anyone
start.
has any doubts? Okay. They can give in the
Yeah,
WhatsApp group. I will solve them. I will try to solve them.
Okay. So now let's start. Yeah, Debo, we can stop presenting.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you guys for being with here till now. It will be now very interesting. Okay. Tell me if my screen is visible, huh? And it's visible. Oh, wait. Is my screen visible?
No, भैया.
Okay.
हाँ भैया आया.
Okay. 1 second. I will try to explain as slow as possible. Huh? So if I'm going fast, then. Okay. As I was telling about the asynchronous, let's first see what that is. Now, since all of you have installed Node, I guess, so we can do that. You can make a new file here. You can make a new file by clicking on this this button, new file. It will make a new file. Since I have already made it, so I am leaving it as it is. You have to make it async.js. You have to write async.js. Now, after writing that, I will try to show you an example of asynchronous behavior of Node. I will simply write console dot log, and in console.log, what I will do, I will try to print one line. I will say that this is line number 1. In the second line, I will write console dot log, this is line number 2. In the third line, I will write console dot log, this is line number 3. What is console.log does, as I have already said, that this console.log simply prints something in our console. Now this white dot means that your file is not saved. To do that, you have to write control.save. You have to click control.save to save your file. Now see, my white dot has disappeared. Now this means that my file is saved. Now I will try to get the output of this file. To get the output of this file, all of you have to open the terminal. To open the terminal, you can simply click here, new terminal. It will open a terminal. Now this is our terminal. This shows the directory in which we are working the file with. We are in this directory. I am in my desktop. The file is stored in WebBlitz folder, the desktop, then WebBlitz. To run this file, first check whether or not you have successfully installed Node or not. To do that, I have to write node dash version. It will show me the version of the node that you have installed. You are getting output, right? You're getting something?
Bhaiya, I think it should be single dash.
भैया minus भी था शायद.
Okay, my fault. Node -v. Yeah, see, I am getting my version. Now to run this file, what I have to do is I have to write node async. You have to give the name of the file, async.js. Let's see what we will get in the output. You're getting any output? You guys are getting output?
Yes, Bhaiya.
So it should wait a second. Module not found. True. Wait a second. What happened? Cannot find the module. Async.js. Acha, I might have I misspelled it.
You misspelled async.
Yeah. Got that. I will again run that. Node async.js. Now I will get the output console. This line is line number 1. This is line number 2. This is line number 3. Okay. That is what I should get. What I'm not getting.
Actually, it doesn't take that much time. It's just that the system is lagging. That's why it's taking that much time.
This is line number 1. This is line number 2. This is line number 3. Now I will again.
So this will be like your output. Yeah, continue.
Okay. Now I will show you an asynchronous example that you have seen in the slide. We'll use an asynchronous function, set time out. This is a function which takes another function, and it also asks Node how much time, after how much time I have to perform that function. I will write function inside the set timeout function. I have to declare one function. Okay, set timeout is basically a way of delaying a function for some time. I want to print here. I will do the same thing. I will do console.log.
Now, in case if you don't know about set timeout, it's basically a function that takes in two arguments. The first one is a function that will be executed after a certain time, and then certain time is passed in the second argument of the set timeout function.
Okay.
So the two arguments that set timeout takes. So first is the argument is the function, second is the time in milliseconds. Actually, time in milliseconds for that how much after how much time that your function that you have passed in the first argument you want that function to be executed.
Yeah. So I want this function to be executed after 2000 milliseconds. Okay. So now saving that file, again running the same command, node async.js. This is line number 3, and after 2 seconds I am getting this is line number 2. So that is what I was trying to say. This is line number 1, this is line number 3, then it is printing this is line number 3, and then this is printing this is line number 2. So this is what asynchronous behavior of node is. It is not waiting for this function to complete. It is not waiting for 2 seconds for this function to complete, but it is directly going to this third line, and it is printing this is line number 3, and after completing that, it is again coming to that function, and then this line will be functioned. Okay, so before going ahead, I want you guys to follow a particular directory structure that which will help us to move to work with our projects very efficiently. So for that, I want you guys to open the folder where you are working. Open the folder where you are working with your files. Have you opened it? Open the folder where you guys are working with your files.
Yes, Bhaiya.
In that folder, I want you guys to make a new folder. I want you guys to make a new folder named public. Wait a second. It's taking a lot of time. Okay. It's not responding. Let's try to make it from the VS Code itself. So what I was trying to say was make a new folder, and inside that folder move everything that you have here. Inside that folder move everything that you are particularly working in. Wait a second for till my system comes. One minute. Hold on for 2 minutes.
What you were trying to explain, Rishiraj?
I will now try to explain the folder. I want them to move these files in the public folder. Then I will make a source folder where we will be start working. I want them to make the public folder and move everything there.
Okay, just this async file, no? And this form index,
Yeah,
everything.
no, everything. Yeah,
Yeah.
inside that public.
Just send me the files.
Okay.
Send me the files.
I guess.
I will
Yeah,
manage.
it has.
Send me every file of that folder.
Okay. Yeah, it's again back to
If
working.
it's working, then fine.
I will make a public folder. I will make a public folder from here itself. Here is my public folder, and inside my public folder, I will move everything. I will try to move everything here.
Bhaiya, my folder one Git directory is also created, so I should move that also.
Git directory. How your Git directory is created? Yeah, you move that also.
Oh, okay,
You
Bhaiya.
don't need to move the Git directory. Just keep the Git directory in the root directory only. Just don't touch the Git directory. Leave it like that. Just move other files like form and index. That will do.
Okay, Bhaiya.
Index is one for the in which we were making the portfolio, right, Rishiraj?
Yeah, I have also did that, and I want you guys to make another folder. Name source. Name src source, and inside the source I will move my async.js. Yeah. Now, having all that done, we are all set. Now I will tell you about something about the npm package manager. We have something known as npm. Okay, we have something known as npm. What it does is that Node has a lot and lot of features. So everything cannot be put in the node itself. So what it does, it has a package manager which manages all the package and package. And by package I mean that it has all the modules, and we can install everything from that npm package manager. So to do that, first what we have to do is we need to initialize npm in the directory in which we are working in. So what we will do is we will write here npm in it. Writing this only is sufficient, but after writing npm init, it will ask you certain questions. So to prevent that, what we can do is we can write -y. What it does that it will accept all the default values which it will ask. It will accept all the default values. So it will take some time. It is installing. So any doubt till now? Any doubts? Any doubts? Any doubts?
Yeah.
You guys are following, right?
Yes, Bhaiya.
Now what we will do is we will create a server, and then we will try to create a model and everything. It's installing, right?
भैया npm init -y.
-y.
There is a space between npm init, there is space, then hyphen, then y. There is no space between hyphen and y. There is space between init and that hyphen.
भैया एरर दिखा रहा है.
I guess show us the error. Show us the
You
error in the group.
can just send the picture in the group.
भैया ये बोल रहे हैं npm error invalid name C++.
Show us the. You can show us the error in the group itself. Show us the screenshot of that error.
Just send a screenshot of the error in the group.
भैया मेरे में एक पैकेज डॉट जेसन नाम का एक फाइल बन गया है.
हाँ, वो पैकेज जो जेसन फाइल बनेगा एक.
That is what needs to be happened. Invalid name web Blitz. Invalid name. Okay. I guess you have a space.
Yes, npm does not. The package manager does not space accept names which have spaces.
You change the name of the folder, like give a means hyphen or something. Okay. You just remove that. You don't.
And the other thing is if someone has made a folder named C++, since there are certain predefined directives for C++, so you cannot make a folder named C++. npm won't accept that.
Okay, so now everything is set. Now what we will
भैया
do
क्या
is we
बोला
will
आपने?
make
मैंने
a
नहीं सुना.
file.
Just change the name of the folder from C++ to some other name.
Okay, now those who have installed it, those whose package.json file has came, now what you need to do is you need to make a file index.js. This is the file from where our we will be connecting to our server. Okay, this is the file from where we will be connecting to our server. Now for that you need to be familiar with one term, framework, which we had in our PPT. Now what is framework? Framework is something which eases our work while working with a language. We have Node.js. For that we have Express as a framework. We have, for Python we have Django and Flux as the framework. What framework does that it eases our work. For example, you can send a request with the node itself, but as you build a web application, where you will have a lot of requests, where we will have a lot and lot of requests and lot of functionalities, then it will be not be able, you will be not be able to only use Node.js. Okay, you need to have a framework to work with Node.js efficiently. So for that, for Node.js, the most popular framework that we use is the Express. Now Express is a module that is available in the available in npm. So for that we need to install npm for install Express first. For installing anything from npm, what we need to write is that we need to write npm I install, that is short for install, npm I small Express. Okay, let me then it. You need to write Express and then press enter. Now it should be installing Express. Now we will be using Express as our framework while working with Node.js. Now it's installing. It is installing, right, in your system?
Yes, Bhaiya.
It is taking time today. I don't know why. Just wait for 2 minutes.
But it is showing that added 50 packages and audited 51 packages in 12 seconds.
Show us the error. Show us the error.
So, but I don't think it's an error. I think found zero vulnerabilities.
Okay.
That's what it is supposed to do.
Just wait for 1 minute. It's installing. One minute.
Rishaj, while this is being installed, you can just move on to the coding. This will keep on installing.
Installing. Okay. So while it's installing, I will show you how to do that.
You can start coding now.
Bhaiya, my terminal is
Yeah. Windows.
This is the issue with Windows system.
That's why I left Windows. Usual, what can we do? Like it's already 6. Like we can wrap it up for today.
I guess
We can continue.
we can continue in the next session.
It's already 6, I think.
There's a question in the chat box. Can you please repeat in meanwhile what to do after npm init? You don't have to do anything after npm init. You just need to follow the default instructions and keep on pressing enter until you reach the end of the uh, questions. npm init it's basically used to create an package.json file to keep a track of your various packages that you are being installed.
And the next command was to install Express from npm. That was the next command npm express. So I think today's session was bit more conceptual rather than implementing anything. But after this introduction part, you can do some research on your own, and in the next session we can directly come to the coding part, right? So
maybe in the next session we can set up the server as well as deploy the website. Deploy into some hosting platform.
Yeah. Like if time allows, then we can cover the deployment part of the next session. After this, we will have a route session for this, and after next session, yeah. And I think we'll keep it up to here for today.
In case you have any doubts, then you can. Yes,
Sangeet?
कल भी होगा. Yes, Ankit, कल ही होगा next session.
Okay, bhai.
And in case you have any issues, then you can post it in the group.
Yeah. So yeah, you guys can leave now. No worries.
Thank you.